So I recognised turtles were going to be a problem a long time ago. So back in about 2005, 2006, I set up Team Turtle. So again, what I like to do if we're going to address an issue is, I'm not an expert. I know a bit about lots of things, a little bit. I'm not an expert. So if we're going to deal with a problem, I surround myself by all the best experts I can find. So when we were going to do the turtles, I got my turtle experts together, and I got the reptile industry together to what is the problem and what can we do to resolve this. What we learned very quickly is turtles are not actually a reptile trade problem.
That's interesting.
They're brought in by the aquatics trade.
Am I right in remembering that there was a moratorium for a while on things like red ears?
No, so that was my plan. So what I put forward, so I got all the people together from all sides. So a lot of the turtle a lot of turtle experts are not necessarily terribly supportive of trade, okay, for reasons I completely understand. I kind of say, look, you need to put that behind you. If you want to be part of this, let's all just be able to accept there is a trade. How can we make it better? And they did that. And we had several meetings, and we could do bugger all, because what we couldn't affect was the importers. So I could talk to the traders, the reptile trade, and try to pull that back.
And they were receptive to that.
They were receptive to that, but they weren't the problem. The aquatics trade were bringing in the turtles in huge numbers and selling them off. So most turtles, 95% of turtles imported into the UK coming in through the aquatic trade. 95% of turtles sold are sold through aquatic stores with fish. And for whatever reasons, they were very different to the reptile trade. They were not willing to engage.
They bring in large quantities and work on small margins. And
so Team Turtle failed after 2 years because there was nothing I could do. There was nothing we could do. Sorry, not me. There was nothing that could be done. It was just going to be what it would be. And I knew where it was going to go because I work a lot with UK government. At that time, I was working a lot with EU government, EU Commission. So we knew there was going to be an invasive species legislation coming through. And I knew turtles, red-eared sliders, and that were going to be on it. Now, red-eared sliders were banned from importation into the EU back in about, I think it was 1997. However, you could import yellow-bellied turtles. So it's a separate subspecies. Yeah. And I like what genius came up with that. Yeah. So the trade moved from red ears to yellow-bellies. And that went through until 2018, I think, when they were finally banned. Yeah. And now we're just moving into other species. So we're bringing in things like river cooties, which are actually even
bigger, aren't they?
Even bigger and more of a problem. So there was nothing we could do with that. So I'm still... Okay, it was a big stick, the whole reptile, and it was the reptile industry getting beaten with a stick unfairly because it's not our problem.
So what was happening, just to recap, was they get bought in when they're about the size of a 50p piece, and they're very cute, and they can live in a small enclosure. And then a year later, the size of a small dinner plate, need mass filtration, lots of UV, a diet that makes them make a lot of smelly poo, a lot of cleaning out, a lot of smell. And what happens to them then?
So... Again, we have to be careful with it. So that is absolutely correct. And at that point, a lot of people will get rid of them.
Get rid of them how?
Well, that's the question. So and this is, for me, was the problem. Where do they go? Well, the only thing they can do for a lot of people is actually release it.
How so? Why wouldn't you bring it here?
Well, so we didn't exist. So my first project, as we were setting the centre up, was to say, from what I could see at that point in time, the single biggest issue the pet industry had was the mass importation of baby turtles, and all these vast numbers of baby turtles needing to be rehomed and nobody to deal with it. So I said we should deal with that.
And there was legislation to stop rehoming centres taking them in, is that correct?
So we have the EU invasive species regulations that came in 2018, and that basically at that point stopped them doing that. So that was a really problematic situation. It's changed slightly, but it's a real mess at the moment. And actually the legislation, I argued very strongly with the EU, and the penny didn't drop with them until it was too late. I said, what do you got to understand? So invasive species legislation is looking at all invasives, which are mostly plants and things like that, as well as... But my argument, I said, if you're dealing with a pet species, you have to think really carefully how you're dealing with that. Because what you're talking... And if you look at the legislation, it uses this word, transported to a place of humane eradication.
Yeah.
Right? I said to people, if they've had their turtle, it's part of their family. Their circumstance, whatever the circumstances are that's forcing them to find a new home for it, maybe they're bored with it, but it may be legitimate. They are not going to have that animal put down.
Yeah.
Okay. What are they going to do with it? And it took them a long time for the penny to drop.
To realise that the legislation was going to
creating a
perpetuate the problem they were
the
trying to
legislation is
avoid.
creating a bigger problem because you're now forcing people to actually release these turtles because there's no other options for them.
Because rescue and rehoming centres couldn't take them in because they couldn't rehome them out afterwards.
So then you have to be licensed to keep them. So we're licensed to keep them.
Yeah.
Well, who wants to do that? And it's a nightmare. And they've got to do all this paperwork.
Yeah.
There's probably 2 or 3 centres. So at that point, I made a proposal that we needed to do it, and I had some plans together. I was very fortunate. Lincolnshire Wildlife Park stepped up, and they created the National Turtle Sanctuary. So they're helping us, but their numbers are limited into what they can take. It's a much bigger problem.
If you love reptiles and care about reptile welfare, why not become a responsible reptile keeping member? From just £4 a month, you'll receive our free quarterly magazine and a window sticker to let everybody know that you support responsible reptile keeping. Our annual membership options offer even more benefits, including discounts, t-shirts and a whole lot more. To find out more, head on over to responsiblereptilekeeping.org.